Well, it is a great pleasure to welcome Allison Danger Foley on this podcast, the first podcast of 2023. She is a DJ based in Denver, Colorado. How are you today, Danger? And it's good to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm honored to be your first podcast of the year. That's exciting. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
The honor is all mine. So I should like to begin by asking you this. So whenever you hear, say, a snowboarder or surfer type attempting to do something that is wildly dangerous, their response to, well, that's pretty dangerous is, danger is my middle name. Obviously, they meant that in a figurative manner, but for you, it's literally the case. Danger is your middle name. So tell us about have how you came to acquire that.
It's funny you bring up those examples because I actually got the nickname when I was in high school. I went to a concert and was in the front row in Colorado, and someone tried to throw a pint glass at the stage and it missed and it hit me in the head. And so I was rushed to the hospital and got 7 staples in my head, and to basically try and make the situation right, the venue offered to just let me go to any kind of concert I wanted. And so I took advantage of that and went to over like hundreds of shows over the next few years. But whenever I would enter the venue, they would just say that Danger was in the building. So that's kind of how the nickname got started.
I see. So, do you remember at the initial concert where the unfortunate accident happened, who was playing?
I do. It was a band called Pepper. Yeah, they're kind of a rock reggae group. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of them, but it's a very fun time, but dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me about that. Like, were you like familiar with the band's output before coming to the concert?
I was, yeah, I'd been listening to them for a while, so I was very excited to be so close to the front. And one of the most unfortunate parts was that I missed the encore because I had to go to the hospital. So obviously it all ended well, and I ended up getting to know those guys and the record label that they worked with just in the years following. So it all worked out. I've seen them play over a dozen times, so I've gotten my fair share of seeing them play, so it's made up for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I should check out their work. Although I do know of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is probably a bit more famous. They do combine funk
Yep.
and reggae into their rock repertoire. So there we go.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
So I should follow up by saying congratulations on winning the Hollywood Bowl opening act contest. The reason why I heard of the contest is because a previous guest of mine, a young singer performer from St. John's, Newfoundland, her name is Paige Penny. She entered the competition too and got pretty far into it before I guess you took it from her. So tell me about the experience DJing at the Hollywood Bowl.
I mean, it was such a whirlwind. It's crazy. I feel like I'm actually still kind of coming down from it. The competition itself was actually it kind of came up on a whim. I'm not sure if you've like obviously you've heard the word intuition, but there's a word called a ping where you follow something and it's just following your gut. So I had this gut instinct to enter the competition, and it basically put me in a position where I really needed to kind of build the plane as I was flying it, which ended up being one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And when I finally got to the Hollywood Bowl, it was just such a surreal thing, but I had basically produced 3 tracks with the help of a production coach, but I had some amazing musicians on the tracks. And I had a really close friend who happens to own a visual company. She does digital design for very large companies. She was able to help me with my visuals. So by the time I got to the stage, I actually felt really supported, and it just felt like destiny. So
Awesome.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
really great.
Right. So your Pang, Pang, I believe that's how it's spelled, led you to perform at the Hollywood Bowl, and assuming for the first time. Um,
Yes,
I believe
first time.
the concert which you were part of, it's was organized to, I guess, promote suicide awareness. Is that the case, right?
Yep, exactly. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So um, basically, they're working to destigmatize mental illness and basically just start the conversation from a musical context, which I think is really important.
Mhm. Right. It's a bit awkward for me to mention the word suicide 5 minutes into this pleasant conversation, but yeah, I bring up nonetheless. But I do see that is the case these days in mostly developed countries where there's an increasing rise in suicidal ideations, if not people actually committing the act itself. So I guess drawing from your experience, why do you think that is, and what can us laymen do to help with that?
Oh man, it's such an important question, and I really actually appreciate you asking. I think part of this is too many people are afraid to actually talk about it. So um, it's a really complicated question and therefore a really complicated answer. I personally deal with depression and anxiety, so I feel like I kind of get it from both sides of the table, as someone who obviously wants to be a part of the solution, but also someone who understands just how complex and muddy the water is. You know, I think, as you mentioned, the reason why the statistics are increasing, especially in developing countries, there's just so much information that is presented to us every day that is out of our control. For instance, this war in Ukraine,
Yes.
the situation going on in Iran, the climate change, natural disasters that are happening. I mean, God, the racism issues that are happening in America and all over the world, you could go on and on. I mean, there are new problems that are coming up every single day that we don't have direct influence over. And I don't want to speak for anybody else. I have had conversations where others adamantly agree, but it is really hard to feel the guilt and just the desire to do something and then just feel burnt out before you can even get started. So I think my approach, at least, has just been to take everything one day at a time, to pick something that really lights you up, that you can be passionate about, and just work to focus on that one thing. Because in my experience, trying to spread yourself so thin where you're trying to help in multiple causes or just feeling like you are running constantly towards trying to do everything, it just leads to crazy burnout. And the reality is that we're each one person, but we can at least try and do something meaningful in our immediate space. So how about you? How do you feel about the
Well,
increase in the statistic?
I love that answer. And I should like to make sure that you are free to discuss sensitive political matters in a public forum, because this I ran into this previously when a guest of mine who talk about these issues were somewhat contacted by their manager saying that they cannot speak about these, and therefore the
Yeah.
interview is shelved and all that. So I would like to make sure that you're
Oh
free to
yeah.
speak whatever topic that came to mind.
I absolutely am I'm on the same page as you. I think I've actually been on the opposite side of this, been in a similar situation to you, trying to get people to be more vulnerable about these conversations, and ran into the same problems. And it's really unfortunate that there is still such a stigma around the mental struggles that we all go towards Did your lights just go off?
Yes, sorry, I'll pause the thing a bit and I'll turn it off. Right, so you were saying before the lights were off.
The lights went off. Remind me, I'm so sorry.
Right, about how there are certain
Oh,
constraints, external
yes.
constraints to what we can talk about and all that.
Yeah, as I was saying, we've both been in conversations with other musicians and with people who, we crave authenticity, especially from people that are on the stage and that we look up to and we just want to relate to them. The people that pour their hearts out and make music that we can relate to so authentically. All we want to do is hear the story behind the song and the story that a person has lived. And so when the silence is like put in place by a management company or a record label, it's really frustrating. And I think it's probably pretty frustrating for the musician as well, because there is such an element of loneliness. The conversations that I've had, I'm not sure if you've heard about the nonprofit that I started. It's called the Learn to Fly Project, but it's basically meant to be the bridge between musicians and their fans to have a private place to actually discuss what we're talking about. And when I was pursuing musicians to bring them into the fold, I was met with the same things that you were talking about, where they're like, oh, unfortunately we have an alcohol sponsor that's part of the tour, and they say that we're not allowed to talk about mental health if we're going to have them as a sponsor, or unfortunately I have this brand deal that isn't allowing me to have other issues that I can talk about, other things that I support. So it's a really wild industry where I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of bands don't feel like they have the autonomy to say what they want. So the ones that do, I very much support and give kudos to. And as I'm getting more and more familiar with this industry, I think it's more and more important to speak up.
Yeah, I'm glad you are able to have this freedom to speak what's on your mind as such. So to answer your question, I can relate to having depression and anxiety because that is something that I'm going through as well. I guess one thing that the depressives have, like, can understand so well that people who have not went through depression perhaps cannot, is the amount of loneliness that you feel almost crushing on a daily basis. And you can try to explain it, but deep down that however many words you use to describe what you feel, they do not suffice. The other person can only understand so much. But when you listen to a piece of music made by someone who you've never met, somehow if that piece of music speaks to you and you can just say, yes, I feel like that. In my case, I recently listened to a band named Slowdive. They are a British dream pop group, and there was a song in there that if I'm ever being asked what does depression feel like, I would just play that song to them. Yep, it feels like that.
Wow.
So yeah, tell me about how music has helped you deal with these mental health issues that you have.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. I'm so grateful to be having this conversation with you.
Likewise.
To answer your question, how music has helped me, I have always listened to music to cope with different emotions. And it's funny, I was actually having this conversation with a friend the other day. When I was in middle school, I was the only one where my teachers would let me bring in CDs to play for my class during quiet hours, or in art class. I basically convinced all my teachers to let me play music for the rest of my class, and they wouldn't let anybody else do it. But we would listen to, depending on what the class wanted to listen to, I would kind of be DJing for them, and we would be listening to Limp Bizkit and System of a Down.
No.
And then we'd be listening to Dr. Dre and Tupac. And I went to a Catholic private school. Like, I looking back on this, I'm kind of blown away, but all these teachers just kind of let me have free reign and to play music. And yeah, basically I had music for every single genre, and I would dive into different emotions and how I would be feeling, and I would be bringing in all my CDs. And then when it came time to burn CDs, I would make mixes for, dozens of kids. And how music has helped me is it's exactly like you said, being able to relate to somebody in a way that is not peeling back to bone, and just letting them know that they're seen and understood through a song that is neutral and it's not too violating, is the most beautiful thing in the world. Being at a live show is heaven on earth for me. I think it is such a tribal experience to watch people move and dance together to one beat. And I think that it's one of the last tribal experiences that we have, because we are so divided these days. And so having everybody go to one venue to see a musician or a DJ or a band, and have everybody feel the same frequency and the same vibration, and experience it, obviously from different places, but in the same environment, it's like nothing else in the world. So yeah, I call live concerts my church, just because I feel more connected to a higher power than anywhere else in the world. How about you?
It is truly the case that live concerts are basically the secular version of church. Yeah, I'm a religious person myself, so for me, church is church. But
church is church.
But but live concerts do bring a similar, if not the same, experience. And when you mentioned System of a Down and Limp Bizkit and all that, I keep picturing you coming up to Serge Tankian and tell them, "Hey, your song Chop Suey kept me sane all these years," and then Fred Durst and break stuff. It kept me sane.
Exactly. Yeah, and my favorite band of all time is the Foo Fighters. And I've gotten a chance to get to know those guys on a personal level, which has been the coolest thing ever, just because they're all as amazing in person as their music is. And obviously the death of Taylor was
Taylor
a really, it was a really difficult time for me, and it actually changed a lot of my personal perspective. But yeah, their music, I think, has had the greatest impact on me.
I should listen to more Foo Fighters, but I can tell you that the song "Best of You" has kept me going in the worst moments of my life.
Wow.
So there we go.
That's one of your top songs?
Yes, it is one of the songs that I go to when things are on the down and down.
What are some others that you really gravitate towards?
I'll have to think about that, but in the meantime, I'd like to hear yours.
I'm kind of all over the place. I love Joni Mitchell. There's the song "End of the Innocence" by, I think it's Don Henley. Don Henley. Yeah, I was gonna say either the Eagles or Don Henley, but it's Don Henley. Love some Coldplay. Love the song "Kyle" by Fred again. That's a newer one. And then I have some random fringe ones in there, like My Chemical Romance, Helena. That song, for some reason, just opens up the floodgates for me. And then Leon Bridges. I think there's a bunch of different emotions that are kind of evoked, but it's all the same feeling of just feeling understood, which is so important.
So as you were mentioning these songs, I would like to mention the musical compositions of Aphex Twin. He is also a British DJ and a genius one at that. If you haven't listened to him, then
I haven't. Yeah,
Oh,
I
wow.
will.
So yeah, his compositions are very odd and very weird, but there are ones that are, really melodic and evocative of emotions and all that. And so the reason why I enjoy Aphex Twin is because his music, by all definitions, is an acquired taste, and it reminds me that being different or being odd is okay, because there have been other people who have been odd before you, and they've made names for themselves. So case in point, Aphex Twin, aka Richard D. James.
Mm.
Yeah, so I like to hear you talk about oddness, I guess.
That's a great lead in. I feel like I've always been slightly odd myself. Just more of a lone wolf, friends in a lot of different circles, the ability to float around and spend time with lots of different groups. But I actually, it's been a while, but I got this tattoo when I was 18, and it is a Bible verse, and it is John 15:18. And the verse
can you recite
is,
that one? Yeah,
I can, yeah.
yeah, there we go. John 15:18.
It's when you believe the world is against you, remember that I have gone before you and it was against
Yes.
me first.
Yes.
And although my religious views have changed and I've kind of, I'd say, drifted away from my faith, a lot of it having to do with my experience just within the church in general, it still brings me a lot of comfort knowing that a person who, despite who he was in terms of a higher power or what, a person who just wanted to love people was murdered because he was different. And I find a lot of comfort in that, oddly enough. I think knowing that love is a vibration. And I lived in Venice Beach, by the way. So if I say some things that might sound a little bit hippy dippy, I apologize, but I I do believe it. I think that everything is vibrational, and I think my purpose on this planet is to help raise other people's vibrations, because it's a collective win. If I can help somebody else expand their consciousness and learn to love a little bit deeper, then we all win from it. So I take my oddness and my ability to be so empathetic to the point where it's almost painful. And I think that it's just part of my experience in this body on this earth. But yeah, it's really lonely sometimes.
I
I get
understand.
that. Yeah.
So if we can dive into your point about religiosity and churches and all that, I obviously I'm a Christian Catholic, to be more specific, but I believe I think this may sound a bit blasphemous, but I don't believe that you can be a serious Christian without at least once saying to yourself, hey, my church is not really following the tenets of Christ, isn't it? And obviously, the Catholic Church has, in many occasions, strayed from the message of Christ. And so do all Protestant churches, to my knowledge. And including yours as well, I believe. In that instance, I'm reminded of the most depressing of all philosophers, Soren Kierkegaard, who's a great Christian existentialist. He believes in God, but he hates all churches, and that is a marker of a man who thought deeply about religion and his purpose in the world, and his adherence to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, looking at religion from just a very high level, I don't want to be disrespectful to you, or to anyone who happens to be religious. I I just want to say that to me, it is kind of adorable that we try so hard to just make sense of the world. And we have all of these different versions of ways that we want to do it. The less adorable piece comes from the power
Yes.
that people take from it. I don't think that that's cute at all. But just the fact that as humans, all we're trying to do is our best, and looking to a role model, or, someone like Jesus, or, a prophet, or just God in general, someone that can keep us accountable and help us to be better. I think it's really sweet, and it's an endearing quality that humans have. As I mentioned, going back to the power piece, I think that's where I get lost in it. And that's where I get just kind of grossed out, and it's just not for me. Because I've seen religion isolate people even more. I've seen people exile people for their differences and just trying their best if it looks slightly different than what the pack is doing. So yeah, I mean, I respect religion. I respect people that want to practice. But I personally just choose to find church at a live concert over being in a building that is devoted to, a God that, I don't know, a lot of people don't necessarily follow anyway.
You might like Kierkegaard because he's basically saying the same things, minus the live concert and the whole "I doubt that God exists" part, but still.
Right? Yeah. No, I know that there's a higher power for sure. I think that I'm not smart enough to have anything figured out. But saying that it's one specific thing, I again, I respect the people that choose to follow something. I just don't necessarily know what it is. So I'm open-minded. So yes, I do feel like I would like Kierkegaard for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate your open-mindedness. And in an attempt to get us away from the philosophical rabbit hole and back to music, you mentioned the passing of Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters. And I guess my question would be how to examine how a death of a musician whom we may not have met, or we have only met on one or two certain occasions in person, and in some ways their passing kind of struck us as if a family member of ours has passed away. And I think I have the same experience when Leonard Cohen died. Again, I guess tying in the religious aspects of what we talk about. He has been someone whom I've revered for a long time, especially after his death. And he's another person whose songs have, even after its authors has passed, have continued to help me through the insanities of life. And I wonder if, personally, you have any experience where a musician's passing has impacted you in such a way.
Yeah, actually, Taylor Hawkins passing was that for me. I think kind of sitting back and understanding that he had so many plans and that he was not prepared to die. He died in Colombia at a hotel, and he had a lot of plans with his family. His kids were growing up, and just taking a step back and realizing how fragile all of this is. And hi, my production coach just got here. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Give you a second. Give you a second.
Yeah. So Taylor Hawkins is passing, and you were.
Yeah. Experiencing that from a slightly closer vantage point was really jarring, but also, I think it was really helpful to get a closer look and to have the experience with some of the people that were really close to him to understand that he was not prepared to pass away and that he had a lot of other things that he wanted to accomplish. And to recognize the fragility of life made me appreciate it a lot more. And, working through some of the aspects that we talked about revolving around, depression and anxiety, it made me a little bit more hopeful. If that makes sense.
Yes. And
You said Leonard Cohen was yours?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that for sure.
So I think we can all feel for Dave Grohl because this is not the first time that he saw one of his band members, passing away.
Right.
And yeah, so moving on to a bit more lighthearted topics. So tell us about the people whom you share the stage with at the Hollywood Bowl. Who were they?
Oh man, it was a really pretty unbelievable lineup. We had Alanis Morissette, Halsey, Weezer, One Republic, and Garbage, and me. So yeah, it was really special. A lot of those bands have been a part of my life and have made an impact on me. Alanis Morissette, I think, being the most influential.
Yeah, Jagged Little Pill and all that, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, lots of good stuff.
I'm happy to say that I've listened to all of their music, including yours. Some more familiar than others, but still. Have you met any of these acts? And if so, yeah, what was it like?
Yeah, I got a chance to have very casual conversations with One Republic and Weezer. And past Garbage in the hallway. Alanis is a very private person, which I understand. But the most positive and in-depth conversation I had was with Halsey. And yeah, she and I had a chance to just discuss a little bit of the importance of the cause of being at that performance and what the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention meant to both of us. She's been someone who's been pretty vocal about her struggles with mental health, and yeah, she's a very relatable, real person. And I think she's actually going by they now. So yeah, they are a relatable person. And yeah, so that was the most powerful person or conversation that I got to have at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah, so I think Rivers Cuomo of Weezer is also another one of my great musical heroes, because he is a lot more creative and talented than many people, even fans of Weezer, give him credit for. I listened to his the Quarantine album that they made, Okay Human.
Oh yeah.
And they featured like a full orchestra in place of guitars, and I think only
I actually
someone
have
like
not listened to that yet. That sounds right up my alley.
yeah,
I'll give that a
I
shot.
think only someone like Rivers Cuomo can do that, and he has also spoken of his struggles with being alienated from society, as well as his issues with religion and all that. And obviously Ryan Tedder of One Republic is massively talented and successful songwriter.
Right.
What else? Yeah, another act that you've mentioned. Sorry, it slipped me, but right, Halsey. Yes, I believe her latest album, she actually got Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails to produce for her, and that is a remarkable feat.
That is extremely remarkable. Yeah, I'm actually really happy that you know so many of these little tidbits because I don't. So this is actually, I'm learning a lot right now. This is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm able to, I guess, be a fountain of information for this.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us about how you started becoming a DJ.
I'm actually pretty new to this. I've been doing it for under 2 years. I was over at a friend's house one night, and as I mentioned, I've been quote, quote, DJing for a very long time, just being in charge of the music of the room. But 2 Junes ago, June 2021, I was over at a friend's house for dinner, and he had a DJ deck and just basically set me up on it and let me play around. And, within the first hour, he basically just kind of gave me the encouragement to keep going. And so we started meeting up weekly for lessons. And then about a month later, he asked me to do a gig with him at a club in Denver. And I was so excited that I invited all of my friends to come out and join. And then word of mouth just kind of started picking up. And I just started booking gigs for different larger venues. And then I got the gut feeling to sign up for the competition, and the rest is history.
And there you are at the Hollywood Bowl, performing with notable acts and all that. So, what is your favorite venue to perform in Denver, Colorado? Assuming that you are a dance music DJ, which means you perform at clubs and all that.
Yeah. There's this place called Beacon, which is a really fun dance venue. It's in Rhino, which is a River North neighbor in Denver. And the people who own it are very creative. They're very much like us. They're deeper, more in touch with the spiritual and emotional side of music. And they draw in just a really fun dance crowd. And playing there has been really rewarding, just because everybody is so encouraging, and not all eyes are on the DJ, which is something that I actually really appreciate. People are just more focused on dancing than having it be an actual performance. I mean, my goal is to just get people to dance. It's not to have people stare at me. I just want people to be in their bodies. And actually, my production coach and I were having the conversation that when you keep your head down and you're just closing your eyes and looking at the ground, that's when you know that it's a good show, because people are actually dancing and, not necessarily focused on what you as the DJ look like.
I see. So from my little experience of attending, clubs and raves and all that, I understand that there's a phrase called life of the party, and it usually refers to a person who attends the party, but in any case, the DJ is the life of the party. So
that's true, yeah.
So being the life of the party, how do you keep the party going?
Man, that is a fantastic question. I will say that sometimes it can be hard to do that. The goal is always to really feel out the vibe of the room and to play music that is actually going to take people on a journey. And typically, you start at a lower BPM, which is beats per minute, and then you build it up, and then you can bring it back down and take people through different experiences. But sometimes it is difficult when there are things going on outside of the room that you're dealing with, or as you and I have talked about, if you're just not necessarily feeling like yourself, feeling depressed or anxious or something, it can be really hard to try and overcome that for the sake of keeping everybody dancing. So I very much respect all musicians who get up on stage, specifically touring musicians who have to put night after night, just put on a smile and entertain people. Because it can be really hard.
Yeah,
it really can.
So I have another musical tidbit to prepare for this next question, and that is, how do you conclude a party? How do you end it on a high note, as George Costanza does it?
Yeah. I will say that it is a combination of having a finale, but also keeping people wanting more. Choosing the last song to end on is always, it's a big responsibility, but you know, I'm getting better at with every show that I play. So I by no means have it entirely figured out at this point. There is something really special about the last song that you choose, especially when you pick correctly. But the way that I choose to try to end a song or end a set at least, or end a night, is to end it with a feeling of hope and end it with a feeling of, I'm like, oh my God, what a great night that was. Just have people wanting to high five each other on the way out the door. You know, some people try and close out with a, you know, get out of the room type thing, just like, all right, everybody, the party's over. But I think, as you and I have talked about, having a hopeful vibration that can kind of carry people throughout the rest of the night that's my vibe. That's what I try and do.
I see. So the promised musical tidbit that I have for you is that are you familiar with the composition Children by Robert Miles?
I'm not.
Okay, so it's a great piece of music, dance music. I guess you're welcome to listen to it. So Miles, I believe, was an Italian DJ, and Children is his most famous work. The main motif is this beautiful melancholic piano melody, and the song is played in a down tempo beat per minute style. And Miles says that there were two inspirations behind that, in that he believed that he should end the rave or the party on a more calming note, because he found that people who get out these parties are more likely to engage in traffic accidents or to be in traffic accidents because of the pulsating energy and all that. And secondly, the second inspiration was from his father, who brought him photos which he took in war-torn Yugoslavia, which is the later half of the 90s. That was something that's happened. So I bring this up because, as we've touched on before, music can, I guess, help us explain what is, unexplainable by words, but it can also help us comprehend the certain incomprehensible phenomenon. So tell us about your personal experience with, I guess, that, music helping you understand comprehend what's incomprehensible. It doesn't have to be, war in Yugoslavia and all that stuff.
Right. I'm trying to even wrap my head around how I want to answer this. Yeah, I think, at least in my experience, the music that I listen to does exactly what you're talking about. The song "A Change Is Gonna Come" by Sam Cooke.
Yes.
Oh
boy. Great piece of music.
Yeah, that's another one that, hits all of the buttons that we're talking about. But and also Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. Yep.
Yes.
These, like, those songs, I think, lend just knowledge that is deeper than anything that I know about resilience and about how there is a cycle and a change that's going to come from everything. So, valleys will become peaks, peaks will become valleys. And yeah, there's only so much that we can do besides just be along for the ride and try and do our best every day. I know that is kind of a little bit of a tangent from the question, but it's a tough one to answer.
I see. Well, and I do love your answer, by the way. So I also would like to mention that, with all my great respect and reverence to Mr. Cohen, his version of Hallelujah is not the best, even though it is the original. The best version of Hallelujah, I believe, was performed by Jeff Buckley.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
agreed.
And
obviously, when you hear the lyrics, you understand that it is more a song about doubt than about faith. And I think Buckley fully brought that, anguishing doubt to life.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's a very haunting and special version for sure.
But in contrast, I believe that A Change Is Gonna Come can only be performed by Sam Cooke. I think only he, with all his talent and range, can bring that song to life. I've listened to several really good covers of that song, but none of them
Doesn't
can
it the same?
transcend. Yeah, none of them can transcend Sam Cooke.
I completely agree. Yeah, it was made for him specifically.
Mhm.
Yeah, the way that it was recorded is just perfect.
Yeah.
Is there any other song that you think was only owned by the person who sings it?
Mhm.
Or does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I guess I'll have to think about that while passing on that question to you.
I think that that's the biggest one for me. Yeah, Change Is Gonna
Mhm.
Come by Sam Cooke for sure. Yeah, I think that that's the one that I'm gonna stick with is number
Okay.
one for me.
I guess off the top of my head, I can think of Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday, which is a much darker song about the same topic that Mr. Cook was addressing. Obviously, the lyrics were not written by her. It was written by a school teacher, I believe. And, Holiday with her, anguish and which she experienced herself in real life, only her can bring the anguish that Black Americans face at that
Right.
time to life. And I think even to this day, it with all of the injustices that Black Americans still face, that song still brings a chord.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, Billie Holiday is next level for sure. There's a I think there's a difference between what I feel that musicians do now versus what they did back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about that.
I don't know. I don't even necessarily know if it's justified, and I don't want to loop in all musicians together now. But I guess
I understand.
as I'm trying to write songs and do these things, I just have such a reverence for the people who really went for it at the beginning when it was a lot harder to get. Do you want to do it again? Got it.
Right. Yeah. Just to pick up where we left off.
Yeah, when it was so much harder to actually get your name out there and to tour and to record an album. I think that there is just a different level of respect that I personally have for the people that actually went through and did it what I would consider the hard way. But yeah, no disrespect to musicians that are around now. It just
Yeah.
is a lot more accessible. And yeah.
Yeah, of course. Lady Day herself suffered through tremendous difficulties, even trying to get her music out there.
Right.
With all the segregation and stuff, there were certain venues and lounges that she was not allowed to perform.
Right.
So, of course, being fans of music as you and I are, I think I think we wonder to ourselves at least once that music was better back then than it is now. Even unjustified that as it may seem, and obviously there are great music being produced today, but I think any music fan would resonate with the statement of music back then was a lot better or
Right.
a lot more valuable. So I wonder if, in your perspective, what do you see are, the reasons why, I guess, contemporary music do not live up to, the music that you and I love from, you know, a few decades ago.
Having access to so much music,
Yeah.
it is almost impossible to not fall into the trap of wanting to sound like somebody else or wondering if you're sounding too much like somebody else, and really getting into your own little rabbit hole where you can create something that is entirely new. I think it is kind of you fall into these rules of different styles of music now, where it's like, nope, this is how house music sounds, nope, this is how a hip-hop album should sound, this is how a pop record should sound.
Mhm.
And I think the music that we're talking about, they didn't really care, and they didn't really have a playbook of what something should sound like. And, I catch myself trying to deal with that all the time. I'm a new songwriter, and every musician's goal is to have a unique sound and to have that sound resonate with an audience in a way that other music doesn't. But I think when music fans like you and I look at the music that we cherish and respect so much from years and years ago, it's because that isn't replicated, because it's just such a unique sound. And yeah, a pop record sounds like a pop record these days.
Yes.
And yeah, which is why it's such a treat for, a person when they actually find a new sound that doesn't sound like anything else.
All right. So there's a dearth of originality these days.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. What I find is that you can be, I guess, original by synthesizing, very distinct spheres of influence to create, perhaps a synthesis of something completely new. And an example I can think of is Lou Reed from the Velvet Underground and Metallica. In fact,
Metallica for sure.
that
Yeah.
has been tried before when Lou Reed and Metallica team up to create an album, and the result is just pure genius. The album's called Lulu, by the way. It's the final album that Reed did before he passed away.
Man, I would love to have more conversations with you. You're teaching me a lot. This is really cool.
Yeah, you're welcome to this show anytime.
Oh, thank you. That's nice of you. Yeah. Combining a producer with a musician, putting two people in a room together that have different tastes. It's the coolest thing in the world. I mean, that's how my 3 tracks, the Hollywood Bowl, were created. I mean, I had an idea of the kind of music that I wanted to make, but I had no idea how to get it actually into the system and get it to sound the way that I wanted it to. And my producer Ryan was instrumental, and it wouldn't have happened without him. So it was a really awesome thing to have his flavors and spices in the tracks as well.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it changes everything about a track when you can combine talent in a room. And that's actually my favorite place to be, is in collaboration with other musicians making music.
Right. So far, I can find your tracks on SoundCloud, which I enjoyed a lot, but haven't been able to find them on Apple Music or other streaming services. So are you planning to include your catalog on those sites as well?
I am. Yes, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm in the process of handling licensing and royalties as we speak. So as soon as I'm able to get all of that settled and figured out, then I will be releasing the 3 tracks on the other major streaming services as well.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And if this gets released after those tracks are released, I'm happy to feature them at the end of the recording. So
I would really love that. That would be amazing. Yeah, it's they've been in high demand, but it's just something that, again, this is a newer process for me. So I want to make sure that I'm doing everything with integrity and above board. So I'm taking the long way, but I know that it'll be worth it. So when they get out there, I'll be absolutely sure to let you know.
Awesome. So final question, one that I often conclude with every musician guest that I have on. What does music mean to you?
It is the vibration of life. It is the opportunity to connect with a person or a group of people without your own words. Yeah, I think that that's my final answer. It's the vessel for connection.
I see. I guess if I can, provide my own answer to it.
Please.
And it may sound pretty hippy-dippy, but I would say that music is the great reminder that, perhaps the greatest reminder, that we are not purely material beings. we have spiritual and emotional needs as well.
Beautifully said.
So on that note, thank you very much, Allison Danger Foley, for being on this program and for this lovely conversation. I wish you a happy new
Thank
year
you.
and all the best
Happy
with
New
your,
Year to you.
all the
Yes,
best
I'd
with
love
your
to
money.
keep in touch.
Yeah, we shall.